That way, or can I have it this way?
However way you want to have it. The people will be sideways if you have it that way.
What do you mean?
No, rotate your phone. You've got to have it that way.
Oh. Okay. Put your shirt off.
Yeah. That's why.
Alright. Get my hair. Oh, it's beautiful. Look at that.
Hey.
So just give it a few minutes so people can tune in, and then I'll do a little bit of a review, and then we'll get cracking. There we go. Alright, so if anybody has any questions, particularly if they're related to aquariums, then Rebel will be scouring the comment section for anything that you might like to contribute. Smart ass comments are most welcome. So we will
Unexpected.
See how we go. So, to get started, has it already passed the time?
It's just the time now. So
Just
say
the time
hello
now.
to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Oh, now, can anybody tell me about watch parties? Because I got told that encouraging people to do watch parties is a good idea. So you can all watch it with, so your friends see that you're watching it. So anyway, if you know anything about watch parties, if you can put a little note in the comment section so we can get all across that, that'd be great.
Can't see where. Do you think it's a tag or something?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Alrighty, so let's start by doing a bit of a quick recap. And if you want to watch any of the previous videos that we've done, if you just scroll down, then you'll see them. Or if you go to YouTube, Majestic Aquariums TV, and then just write Q&A, and then you'll see that we've done various of these Q&As in the past, and we plan to do them on a semi-regular basis. We're actually looking next week at potentially doing a kids one. So if you've got any thoughts for us on that, then it'd be great if you hit us up. And we'd also be really interested to know what time you reckon we should do it. So day and time that would suit kids, and what sort of age group you think we should be targeting. So that might be our little project for next week. Do a kids crash course into fish keeping. And if you have any other topics that you think you'd like us to cover, or any guests that you'd like to have on our little thing, because we've had guests and we'll certainly bring in more, and hopefully have a little bit of fun. So first is a recap of the past events. So what we did day one was here, and what we basically discussed was the 8 principles. So we suggested that every person that keeps a reef aquarium, you really want to jump on Majestic Aquariums TV on YouTube, and then in the search bar just write 8 principles, or 8 reef aquarium principles, and there's basically 8 rules that make or break the tank. So it's really worth, if you're a beginner, get very familiar with those 8 rules. And then if you're experienced, it's not a bad idea just to watch them every now and then, because you can sort of pick up bits that maybe you've forgotten, or maybe things that you've been taking for granted. So it's a really good idea. Also, if you're ever having any issues, it's good to go back and watch the 8 rules again, because you'll pretty much learn that the rule that you don't know or don't understand is basically your problem. If you fix that, you'll usually fix your problems. Then day one, once again, you can re-watch this video just by going to Majestic Aquariums TV on YouTube or scrolling down on this particular channel, Facebook page, is we discuss the differences between setting up a new tank and a dream tank. So if you're a new hobbyist, or if you're going to keep a tank for a limited period of time, you may be very well interested in the value of the tank. But if you're going to build a dream tank and it's your forever tank, then it is a different way of looking at it. We also discussed tank size and basically suggested that I've been selling aquariums for 24 years, and every day I'm pretty much involved in, should we get the small tank or should we get the big tank? And never once has anyone come back in and wished their tank was smaller. They always wish it was bigger. As far as tank shape is concerned, it is absolutely the longer the better. Width, pretty much the wider the better, but 30 inches just seems to be a really great workable width. If it's a double-sided aquarium, it's really worth making it as wide as possible to allow a good photosynthetic shape of your reef on both sides of it. So you'd want 30 inches, if not 36, if you're thinking about a double-sided aquarium. And then as far as height's concerned, the really tall tanks look so awesome as long as they're somebody else's. Because the high tanks is where the money comes into it, because you need super thick glass, and the high tanks, as soon as it's over 30 inches tall, then everything's out of arm's length. So everything is a pain in the neck to do. So in a perfect world, say 6 foot long would be great, 2 foot to 2.5 foot high, and 2.5 foot wide would really be a dream tank shape. Tank position, we discussed that you really want your tank somewhere that you can enjoy it. You don't want it in the spare room, you don't want it in the study, you don't want it in the entrance of the house. You really want it somewhere that you can sit down, relax, in proximity to the TV, not too far away from the beer fridge, and in a place where you can really enjoy it, preferably away from direct sunlight. We also started discussing the value of a sump filter, various medias such as marine pure and polyfilter, and the importance of having a top-up system. So topping up allows stability of your salinity and allows you to go for longer periods of time without tending to your aquarium. We then discussed the importance of a protein skimmer, particularly nowadays with carbon dosing. It's super important that you've got a good protein skimmer and that you know that it really needs to be cleaned twice a week. And when I say cleaned, I mean the inside of the neck has got to be cleaned twice a week. And so just getting a bottle brush and giving that a clean, because once fatty acid builds up on the inside of the neck, then it will massively reduce the efficiency. So that was sort of what we covered day one. And then day two, we started discussing wave makers and the importance of water flow. We had a big discussion about lights, light options, light settings. So once again, these previous videos you can go and watch whenever you want. We then discussed the importance of a heater/chiller to ensure that your reef is being kept at agreeable temperatures. We then discussed bare bottom tanks versus substrate tanks, which I gave my very subtle opinion of what I think of bare bottom tanks. A lot less attractive than bare bottom people sometimes. And we discussed salt, what salinity you should be running your tank at, whether you want to use natural seawater, salt mixes, and preferably RO water mixed with a good quality salt. Now that leaves us to today. So once again, if you have any questions, smart-ass comments, or anything else you want to contribute, then Rebel will certainly make that known. Okay, so question one, Miss Rebel.
Just conquered the world of reducing nitrates and phosphates, now have remaining green algae on the rockwork. What's the best way to remove it?
Alright, well, that was disappointing. I was looking good for a second there, and now I'm back. Okay, so if you've conquered nitrates and phosphates, then it's only really a matter of time before your other algae are probably going to subside. But what's really important is to realize that there's weeks, if not months, involved with what I call biological lag. Now, biological lag means you plant a tree and then you don't go looking next week for the tree. It takes several weeks before it will even pop out of the ground, and then it will take a long time to actually grow. So if you're controlling an issue with nitrate and phosphate and you're seeing good headroom, then whatever you're doing is obviously quite effective, and so that's unreal. But the other thing to be aware of is that your rock, particularly if live rock, but any porous rock, is going to have a like a buffering capacity. And what I mean by that is that if you've got really healthy, really low nutrient rock, then over time you're going to build up nitrates and phosphates, and they're going to pretty much absorb into the rock. Then there's going to be a sort of like a nice period of time where the rock acts as a buffering capacity and absorbs your nitrates and phosphates and helps to keep your tank nice and stable. But then again, once the rock is actually full, then it works in reverse, because once you start to lower the nutrients of the water, then the nitrates and phosphates and all that will start leaching out of the rock. So therefore, you might fix your nitrate and phosphate and your levels are now good, which is 0.1, but then it might take a period of months even for those nutrients to seep out of the rock. So in regards to nitrate removal, like carbon dosing is very, very effective. So you could look at biopellets if you've got a big tank, or preferably a dosing pump with a effective carbon source, such as Red Sea's Nopox. It's a really great one. Then as far as phosphate's concerned, there's many options. There is lanthanum liquid dosing, and it's good to do that for a while because that will really get into the rock and really help to bind out a lot of your phosphates. And then ultimately would be understanding your Redfield ratio. So Redfield ratio is something that in the aquarium industry we're really only getting our head around, but we're seeing enough evidence that it works like magic. So the idea of the Redfield ratio, which is really worth looking into, is 100 parts of carbon for roughly 16 parts of nitrate for roughly 1 part of phosphate. Now when you get the ratios of nutrients in check, and then you get a balance of what they call the Redfield ratio, then you find that your dephosphating bacteria just seem to really activate. And then the thing that doesn't really make sense is that once you get it right and you get your Redfield ratio in check, it just seems to keep going. So it's not like you've got to keep worrying about it. It's a lot of the time you just get it right, all the bacteria establishes, and then you just hit this magical place where the tank just seems to do no wrong. So in order to do that, sometimes you need to do things, for example, increase your nitrate level, because a higher amount of nitrate may then balance your Redfield ratio. So this is something to look into. It's something that, once again, we're just getting our head around, but we're really excited about it because we're seeing a lot of evidence with it. So with your carbon-based products and with a lot of these specific products that are slowly coming on the market, all of nitrate reduction and phosphate reduction and stuff is just getting easier and easier. So the long and short of it is, if you have a rock full of nutrients, you just got to hang in there. You've just got to keep reducing your nitrate and phosphate, and just know or trust that eventually that rock will seep it all out, and then eventually you'll be in a positive position as opposed to a negative position when your rock's all full of organics. The other thing to be aware of too is phosphate, because phosphate's a bit of a tricky one. I think it's ionic phosphate that can be tested, but then there's all different other types of phosphate which are found in an aquarium that aren't going to show up on your test kit. So it's really common that somebody will say, oh, but I've got this hair algae growing, but my phosphate level's 0. it could very well be that your phosphate level is not 0. It's just that the particular phosphate that your test kit's testing may actually be 0. Or it could just be that you've got a crap test kit that isn't picking it up anyway. Or it could be that you're so impatient that you do your test and 30 seconds later you decide there's no phosphate in it because you're not prepared to wait for 10 minutes or whatever the product's requiring. These are all very common issues. So the other thing too is that when your rock is full of phosphate and stuff, as the nutrients are getting released out, the algae's just going to pick it up real quick, take it out of solution really fast. And algae actually stores a huge amount of phosphate for what it actually uses. So when you do clean, for example, clean the glass of your tank, it's really good to not just get a magnet cleaner and just clean it off, which takes 30 seconds and that's cool. But if you use something like polyfilter that you can actually wipe over the glass, and then the aim is when you pull the sponge out to have the algae, because if you can actually pull the algae out of the water, then you're using the glass as a algae filter. But then if you get a magnet and just go and clean it all off, then that really isn't the case, because you're just going to dislodge it all and it's going to either just stick back on and grow again, or it's going to die, release its nutrients to encourage the growth of more algae again. So where you do have the ability to use a piece of polyfilter or whatever to wipe over the glass and pull the algae out with you, then that's a great way of reducing your nutrients. So we had a lovely little algae chat there. So if you want any more information, if that little ramble didn't answer what you needed to say, then make sure that you put another comment down there. But also, as far as algae is concerned as well, is your other parameters. Like, it's not just nitrate and phosphate. Like keeping your calcium, carbonate, magnesium, pH all up nice and high is really going to benefit in these situations. You really don't want the water getting more acidic when you've got algae, otherwise it's all just going to fuel it even worse. So keeping a good eye on your levels. The other thing that's quite good too is if you are getting mystery algae problems, especially with some of the ICP tests like Triton that are available. So it never hurts just to send away. They've got their lab here in Cairns now. I don't know why they didn't do Sydney. Probably not cool enough to have it in Sydney. But if you send the Triton test away, and then you'll get a much better understanding, and you can also start engaging Julian and they can also help you through as well. So sending away a Triton test is really going to help you understand what you don't know that you don't know about the aquarium.
Yeah, they're great.
So it can be really helpful to give you a wider spec of what's going on in your tank and help you solve problems that maybe you didn't even know that you had. Any more questions?
Yes, best way to cycle a new tank with artificial rock.
Okay, so best way to cycle a tank with artificial rock. Now, so in the old days, they would say chuck a prawn in. The prawn produces a whole lot of waste. It grows a whole lot of bacteria. And then when your waste levels come down, you chuck your fish in. So this is an absolutely valid way of doing it. You absolutely can do that. There's also a lot of bacteria supplements and live bacteria cultures on the market now, and they're getting better and better. So that's definitely a space to watch as well. But as far as I'm concerned, my favorite is you set your tank up. If possible, get yourself a bit of cured filter material. Like, for example, a lot of our customers will set them up with a bit of media out of our filters. So they've got a bit of well-cured material to get started. And then I will add a small amount of fish. So the way that I'll populate a tank, I'll put a small amount of fish in, then I'll wait for a month. Now, if it's a decent sized tank, then I'll usually have a quarantine tank. So around that time, I'll set the quarantine tank up. I'll get my next batch of fish ready in the quarantine tank. I'll quarantine them for a month. Once I'm happy with those fish, and I'm happy with the fish that I put in the tank, which was my first lot of fish, I'll then introduce those fish into the tank, and you could even take some of the good filter material out of your quarantine tank as well, just to give your tank a little bit of a boost. So my plan when setting a tank up is a little bit of fish, wait for a month, allow the bacteria to colonize, add a little bit of fish, wait for a month, let the bacteria colonize. And when I say a month, I'm not just talking about biological life cycles. So I'm not just talking about bacteria, nitrifying bacteria and so forth. I'm also very much talking about pathogen life cycles. So there's all sorts of pathogens that your fish are going to introduce. Now, some people are under the impression that there are such thing as diseased fish if you quarantine undiseased fish, or fish that don't carry disease, if you quarantine your fish properly. And that is absolutely not my experience, nor is the experience of most other scientists in this field. So fish contain diseases, and a lot of these diseases are capable of making the fish sick. So the plan is for the fish to have good, healthy immune systems, and their immune systems contain unbelievably powerful antibodies and amazing body slime, and they have a really amazing ability to actually to combat various pathogens and to keep themselves healthy. So a healthy fish, which is not stressed, which has got a good immune system, is really your best bet. So then, providing that you quarantine your fish first, make sure that no diseases are going to crack out. Because the other thing about a fish is that when you're buying a fish and then you got it in the bag and it looks great, but you don't know what the fish has been through to actually get to you. So the fish could be literally at the end of its tether, its immune system could be basically shot, and you can't tell, because fish will do anything to look good. So, like me. Fail. So basically, what the fish will do anything to look good, because oh, that's terrible. Because if they don't look good, the other fish kill them. Yeah. So I'm glad I'm not a fish.
Yeah, me too.
I'd be a dead fish. You might be all right. Yeah. Okay. So quarantining fish is really, really important. And so where do we get to next?
Bubble scrubbing.
Bubble scrubbing, algae scrubbing, bubble scrubbing.
Thoughts on bubble scrubbing?
Okay, I'm a big fan. What I'm assuming you're talking about is bubble blasting. So bubble blasting is something I do for fun. Surprisingly fun. What you do is you just get your power head or something and you aim it so it's just sucking out billions of micro bubbles, and you turn your whole tank into a big protein skimmer. Because if you're pumping micro bubbles all through your aquarium, then little sinks of organics in places that you didn't even know you had are going to bond with oxygen and propel to the top. So this is a good practice to do sometimes. Yeah. So basically just create a big micro bubble bath with your power head just by lifting it. Even what's really simple is when you're doing a water change and your water comes down, just lower it to the point where the power head is slightly out of the water, and then the power head is just going to make the whole tank turn white. And this is a good thing, because once again you're going to get bubbles into the little cracks and crevices and holes within you, and then the bubbles are going to propel up any organics that are in it. So really, it's very easy to do. It's a super good idea. And a lot of people will do a bubble blast every water change just because they can't be bothered turning off their power heads. So you might be doing a bubble blast and you might not even know it. But I think they're a really good idea. More questions, Rebel?
No, I think that's it for the minute.
Okay, so what I'm supposed to be talking about is rock. And then I need to talk about fish introduction. That will be fun. Okay, so now, as far as rock is concerned, there's so many options now. Live rock, not live rock. There's just heaps of options. And the fake rocks, they've got a few advantages. You can dry scape them. so you don't have to, they're very easy to scape it dry. It's not going to cycle, so adding extra rock later on, you're not concerned about your tank recycling, which if you go chuck too much rock, live rock in, can actually be a problem. The main thing they really try to sell you is the advantage of people are sending me disgusting photos, which I'll look at later. Popping up on my phone, very, very distracting. Anyway, keep up the good work, people. Now, okay, so I love live rock because I don't know, there's just something real about it. There's something organic about it. There's something authentic about it. So if I have my choice, I definitely have live rock. But that's not to say for 1 second that there's not disadvantages with it. Disadvantages is you might end up getting some aptasia, might piss you off. You might end up getting mantis shrimp or anything like that. A lot of these problems can actually easily be solved with hydrogen peroxide or an illegal 30-watt laser. But there's various fun ways that you can cleanse your live rock. You could also consider quarantining it. That way you get to at least check it out before you start using it. And I still think it's worth it. So you read so much about a rogue mantis shrimp that came in the live rock that killed all your fish, murdered your family, and set fire to your house. And it definitely happens, but a lot of it's, somebody told me that they read on the internet that their auntie's friend had a problem. So it is a very real problem. But with the amount of people that I deal with and the amount of live rock I sell, I just don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make it out. So once again, if in doubt, then go for the fake rock. There's some really cool looking stuff out there available, but I prefer the real thing. I prefer live rock.
Best way to get purple on live rock.
Best way to get purple on live rock. So coralline algae is pretty much the game. So I can't see a live stream. Oh. So where are you looking though? He's probably on Pornhub. No.
Thanks,
anyway.
John. Tell John not to send messages to me. Thanks very much. Okay.
Now, okay, so what was I talking about? Live rock, dead rock, different sorts of rock. Yeah, so pre-quarantining live rock is obviously something else you can do. We can have a whole big chat about how to get rid of pests. Pests are a very real thing as far as something you need to contend with is concerned. Once again, with the amount of tanks that I'm involved in, I have very little actual problem with it. Now, so as far as how much rock to get, so the rock is really there to create the structure of your reef. So when I go to scape a tank, I will look for rock that is going to have as good shape as possible. Now, purple, that's what I was talking about. I get very sidetracked.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah, anyway. Okay, so we'll have a quick talk about... So the colour of your live rock, or the colour of your rock, is basically due to what your water quality was like last month. So if you had too much phosphate last month, you might have green algae growing on your rock. But the aim is to get coralline algae. So it does help to have some coralline algae. So picking yourself up some live rock, which has got coralline on it, and sort of chip it around in the tank to make sure that there is actually coralline in your tank. And adding a few pieces of rock throughout your reef which contains coralline. Having coralline is a good start if you want to grow coralline. And then basically it's just really a matter of making sure your pH is about 8.4, not less. You really want about 8.4. Make sure your KH is about 8 DKH. Make sure your calcium is at least sort of 420. Make sure your magnesium is at least sort of 1300. And then try to ensure that your nitrate and phosphate levels are nice and low, like definitely below 1. And then you'll find that the coralline will just grow, providing that you've got lights and you've got water flow and you've got everything else you need. Then the coralline will just grow and grow and grow. So if you're having issues growing coralline, then it might just be a new tank, so it might not be established enough. So if you just keep your tank nice and stable and keep your levels as optimal as possible, and then the coralline will just come. And if it doesn't just come, there's many products like Purple Up and so forth that claim to help. And making sure that you add some rocks that have got coralline is going to help as well. So once again, when I go to buy my rock, I will normally start with live rock because I like live rock. And then I will look for really good shapes, because I actually don't really care about the color, because once again, the color of the rock is just a reflection of your water quality last month. So once your tank is well established and you've got through the phases, so basically you start your tank, you put in your live rock, generally it goes like a lovely shade of concrete, then it will often turn light brown, which will look literally crap, and that will be diatom that will tend to grow all over and absorb any silicates that might be in the system. Then that tends to give way to like a green algae, and then that might be there for a few weeks, and that might make your whole tank look like dog's balls as well. And then if you're really not under control, then your tank might start getting cyano, like it's terrible red yucky algae that grows everywhere like crazy, cyanobacteria. And if your water quality is good, your circulation's good, your surface agitation's good, and if you've been very good, then you should start seeing coralline. Most people start getting coralline around 4 months, so don't go stressing out too much if you're not getting coralline. You know, there's many other things that you can stress out about. But if you make sure your water's right, and then be a little bit patient, have a little bit of trust, and then you'll find that the coralline will soon enough follow. And so focus on good water quality and don't worry too much about coralline, because once it comes, it'll come. It'll just keep coming.
I'm not sure it's related to the coralline, but calcium reactor or continue daily dosing of 150 a day on calcium.
Okay, so question about calcium reactor. Now, a calcium reactor is a very good investment, particularly for someone with a real big tank. So if you're going to be, but personally, I just can't be bothered filling up the CO2, because it just becomes one of those things that you're just like, oh yeah, I'll go down and fill up my CO2, and then you're a bit of a spastic and you don't put it on properly, you blow out all your CO2. So there is mistakes that you can easily make when using CO2, because what a calcium reactor will do is inject CO2 into a chamber that'll contain like a calcium carbonate structure, and then that calcium carbonate structure will get broken down by the acids produced by the CO2, and that will release carbonates and calcium into the water. So if you've got a pretty serious fish tank, then this is a pretty good thing to think about. But these days, the 3-part solutions are just so good. Also, if you've got a big tank too, you don't have to use the liquids. You can get the powders, and then providing that you're half competent to make sure that you mix them up the same every time, then they're really quite economical, because you don't even pay that much for a 3 or 5 kilo bucket of powder, and then you're going to and that's going to make up so many liters and of solution. So value for money.
700 litre system, the guy who wants that.
Yeah, well, a 700 litre system is big enough to consider a calcium reactor. But once again, when your tank gets pretty stable and you've got a good 3-part solution that that you're happy with, then hi Colin.
Hi Paul. Hello all three of you.
What do you want to know?
Oh, that's all good. So, so calcium reactors, great idea. Personally, I couldn't be bothered. I just set up a dosing pump, and I would just put on a 3-part solution. Oh, Evans found us. Hello, Evans. Now, okay, so so live rock. I was going to talk a little bit about aquascaping. So the way that I will aquascape a tank is, first rule is try to buy a rock that you like the look of, and try to buy rock due to the shape. So a couple of big fat boulders I'm not interested in. But what I do want to do is, let's imagine that that's a fish tank. Then I will just put a really fine layer of sand on the tank. And if you want your tank to look completely crap and unfinished, don't worry about the sand, just have a bare bottom tanks. Then you may as well get fake rock too. You may as well get fake corals. So a nice thin layer of sand, so it doesn't get too much crap caught in it, but it still looks good and looks natural and looks nice and looks finished. Then I'm looking for some awesome shaped rocks. But what I'm trying to do is touch the rocks on points. So in a perfect world, I'll have some magical rock that sort of... And I don't mind using the back of my tank. Because, like, you're not going to look through it. If you scratch it a bit, who cares? Because what I'm really looking at doing is creating like a shelf. So let's say we're looking that way. And then we're going to put some corals there that are going to get light. Going to make like a shelf so we can put some corals there. Then we're going to make like a little shelf. So coral there, and the idea is so everyone gets some light. So we're going to try to minimize how much we're touching the bottom. This is looking at the side of the tank. So we're going to try and touch on points. We're going to try and layer it in steps. And we're going to try to make sure that everyone doesn't get in each other's way. Like, no, I use the back glass. See the back glass? That's my friend. Otherwise, you go and try and make yourself a tank that tries to stay away from the back glass. Don't worry about cleaning the back glass. You can't see through it. Then they'll try and make a reef like that, and then it just all ends up too steep because your light source is there, and then the face of your reef suddenly gets too steep, and it's just too hard. So if it was up to me, which I'd use the back glass because I really want to get this with my tank. I want photosynthetic surface area. I don't want this, which is too steep. And then this coral starts doing well and shades all those ones and stuff like that. So this is nice and stable. This is giving me a better photosynthetic surface area. This is my choice, this way. Not as much a fan of that. So once again, I'm looking for rocks that are going to give me some nice caves and minimize how much I'm touching the bottom. And I'll create my magical rocks here, which are once again creating steps. So the front step, the middle step, top step, whatever. And then once I've put the rocks in position, I will do a tap test. So I'll tap on the rocks, just as if a fish was pucking away. And I will just make sure the rocks aren't going to get knocked over. Because if I'm giving them a little whack with my fingers, then if they're not falling over, because you'll find that you can have a rock like that and it will be very unstable. Whereas you can just turn it a tiny bit and it sort of like interlinks, almost like a piece of Lego or something, and then you'll find it's really stable. So,
what about a mirror back?
A mirror back, that sounds pretty gay. Who asked that gay question?
John Bailey.
Oh yeah, no wonder. Okay, so if you he'd probably only wanted to look at himself. So if you really wanted to have a mirror back, that will look good for about a year until the mirror gets all corroded from all the salt. But maybe when you're setting up one of your plastic scaped goldfish bubble-eyed goldfish tanks, isn't that? I think he loves them. So he could put a mirror on his freshwater bubble-eyed goldfish tank with fake plants and fake aquatic diver. Let me know if he asks any more questions. God love him. So rock, I prefer live rock. The way I decorate the rock is like this. The way I select the rock is just pick it up in my hand, roll it over, and I try to see if the rock's got one good feature. Because what you want to do is use that one good feature. For example, my one good feature is my good looks and my striking, my humour, my awesome personality. What about you? What feature do you reckon I've got?
You're beautiful.
All right, yeah, I'll go with beautiful. Okay, so now fish introduction. And any more questions before I go on to...
Yep, got a question.
Yes.
Okay, George wants to know, how would you do a tank transfer, do's and don'ts? I'm going from a standard 4 foot to a 5 by 2 by 2.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so what I will do to do a tank transfer is I will get myself a whole bunch of foam boxes, like can you see them up there? There's my foam boxes. Hello, foam boxes. So I get a whole bunch of foam boxes, and I'll get a whole bunch of drums, that hand drums, 20-litre drums. So a lot of aquarium shops can lend them to you. Then I will drain the water into my foam boxes, and I'll put just enough water to cover my fish. So I don't want a deep water, I want the water just enough. So when the fish are swimming around in the drum, they're actually aerating their own water. And then I will get all my rock out. So I'll get the water out and I'll put them in foam boxes, just enough to cover my fish. Then I'll get another couple of foam boxes that I'll have enough to cover the corals. So then I will get my corals out, throw them in the ones that I've designed for the corals. Then I will remove all the rock, but I'll remove the rock actually after I take the water out. So let's get this the right way around. So I'm just making this up as I'm going on. I actually do this all the time. So transferring tanks would be one of my specialties, because this is something I do probably 2 days a week. So once again, I get lots of foam boxes. I put enough water in the foam boxes to accommodate my fish. I put enough water in the foam boxes to accommodate any corals I've got. I then get a whole bunch of drums. I then dump most of my water out until I've just got a small amount of water in there. I will, as I'm doing that, I'll be taking the corals out to put the corals into the drums that I've got set up for the corals. Then, once the water is right down, I will then remove the rock and put them in foam boxes. And the last bit of water I'll discard, because the problem with when you're uprooting a tank is that you might not have taken the tank down for years. So the back of your reef, despite your efforts to set it up effectively, could be full of like anoxic zones and hydrogen sulfide and stuff like that. So I've been involved in tanks where I've literally gone and rearranged the tank, and I've released hydrogen sulfide from anoxic zones in the back of the reef, and then either watched all the fish die right in front of me, or I've had the customer ring up abusing me each day, telling me that more and more of their fish have died. And what that is that you go and remove your rock, you expose anoxic zones, you release hydrogen sulfide, and you kill the fish. So this is not normally something that happens, but it is something that definitely happens. And when you're getting paid to go to someone's house to help them with the tank, and you manage to kill all their fish, you certainly look like a dick. So the two things that I'll do to reduce the chance of looking like a dick is there's a product called Aquarium Detox, which, thank you coronavirus, is currently not available. And I don't know of any products similar. They probably exist, I don't know of any. If you do know of any, then make sure that you put a little comment in the bottom. But what this product does is it's bacteria from mud, and then it goes in and it's incompatible with anoxic bacteria. So it basically goes in and just disrupts those zones. And any tank that I've put Aquarium Detox in, and then I've done a service in a month's time, is totally fine. I also love using it for ponds, because you can service a fish pond, and there could be like a foot or 2 foot or more of sludge in the bottom. And then if you actually go and just start cleaning that sludge out, you release all that hydrogen sulfide. Two things can happen. One is that you can kill all their fish, which, once again, they're usually paying me to clean their pond out. It's not something I normally do for free. And then you kill all their fish, so you look like a dick. And the other thing you can do too, just to prove that you are a dick, is that you get sick. Because like sometimes I'll clean out a fish pond in particular, and it's releasing hydrogen sulfide, and idiots here stomping around in the pond, and you get sick. And so it's not that fun. So if you're going to do anything major with your tank, it's really great just to chuck a bit of Aquarium Detox in first, and then don't do anything major for a month, because you need to give that bacteria a month to sort of do its job. And then if you go clean your pond or clean your tank or do whatever major you're going to do. Now, if you don't have that luxury, because it's not available right now anyway, then the other thing you really want to do is make sure you put some polyfilter into the filter after you do the clean, because the polyfilter will adsorb and remove hydrogen sulfide. And I know that because I've got a very interesting story about that. I was doing a service at a very interesting establishment, and they had a real big tank in there, and I just sold them recently about $30,000 worth of sharks and big fish and stuff. And then underneath the tank was a couple of like return lines, like little 15mm return lines. And I pointed out to the owner, hey, look, you know, these taps are shut. They look like it's like return lines. And I'm thinking, oh, well, there's probably a bit of dead water in these. Yeah, she'll be right. It's a big tank. She'll be okay. So I just opened them up under his instruction, and it stunk his place out, which wasn't ideal considering the place it was. And then all the sharks started like swimming like tail ending, and the fish are gasping at the top, and I was starting to be concerned about my life, because I'm not a guy I want to kill his fish, not that I want to kill anyone's fish. But then I said, don't worry, I've got some polyfilter in the car, it'll fix it. So I ran up to the car, which was parked a fair bit away from this place because I couldn't get parking too close, and I grabbed lucky I had 3 large polyfilters in my van, which, you know, normally I'd be lucky to have 1, but I had 3 this day. And I ran down, chucked him in the filter, told him it'll be all right. I didn't believe myself for 1 second. I thought I was completely full of crap, and I didn't think for 1 second that these 3 little sheets of polyfilter were going to do anything against about a 12,000 litre tank full of fish dying. But anyway, as it was, I chucked in the polyfilter, and then within a short period of time, the smell went away, the fish started swimming back to normal, and I survived. And it's just like a big nightmare that I wish never happened, but it's all good now. But it was very dramatising at the time. So just have some polyfilter on hand. If hydrogen sulfide gets released, then make sure that you chuck it in there, because it might actually save your life. Thank you.
You're such a dick. All right, so to come back to the topic that you're actually asked about, was about this move. The question was, do you take the corals off the rocks?
Okay, so I tend to try to pick the rock up where possible, but sometimes you just got to take them off. So once again, I'll set up all my foam boxes. I'll get all my drums. I will put water in the foam boxes, enough for the fish. I will put water in the foam boxes for the corals. I'll remove the corals, put them in the foam boxes. I'll drain the water out of the tank. I'll try not to disturb the rock too much because I'm paranoid about hydrogen sulfide, because it has happened to me, as you can hear. You see my trauma. And then once the water's out of the tank, when there's just a little bit left, I'm going to dump that last bit of water. I'm going to remove all the rock out. I'll just give the gravel a bit of a stir. Then it's good to give the gravel a clean or replace it, because if you try to do it and the tank's well established and you put the tank back together with old gravel, it's like starting with the Warrenora River. So I'll often give the gravel sand a bit of a clean. I'll put just a thin layer of sand back into the water. I will then rescape the new tank using, hang on, my phone is bossing me around, using the techniques that we were just talking about how to decorate the tank. I will then put the rock into the new tank, all scaped up, so I'm happy with it. I'll put the corals into the new tank. I'll put the fish into the new tank, and then I'll generally have a spare amount of water, which is at least at a temperate temperature and generally slightly lower in salinity. So this transfer is going to be fairly stressful on the fish, regardless of how well you go about it. So we want to try and make sure that when the fish get introduced back in, the salinity is slightly lower, because that will be an ease of osmotic pressure. You will definitely not want to put the fish into higher salinity, because anything that's stressful, which is going to occupy the fish's molecular energy, we want as much energy available for the immune system as possible, and we do not want to give the pathogens any head start. Increasing salt tends to encourage the pathogens, decreasing salt tends to disencourage the pathogens, decreasing salt tends to reduce osmotic pressure, tends to increase the amount of energy available for the immune system. So that's how I do that. Now, so rock we've talked about. Now fish.
Hang on.
Yep.
To rock.
Back.
Do you recommend leaving excess live rock in the sump?
Okay, yes, I do like to leave a little bit of excess live rock in the sump, but I don't really rely on live rock for my filtration. So live rock is undoubtedly going to be a form of filtration, but the thing about live rock is from one piece to another piece, the density is going to be completely different. The types of bacteria that's going to grow within and on will be completely different. So I'll use something like Marine Pure as my biological media, because then I'm getting exactly the surface area to volume ratio that I'm looking for. I'll find that my carbon dosing is more effective with Marine Pure, because therefore I've got a perfect surface area to volume ratio to allow the formation of denitrifying bacteria and so forth, and that's how I have best success. Any more questions?
Yeah, cool. No, that's it.
So we shall...
Got a few coral questions, but I think we'll keep going with what you're doing and come back to you.
Okay. Been on a diet lately, so I'm drinking water.
It's sad, man.
Yeah, but look at that. Look at this. Ooh. See that?
It's so not a good angle.
Yeah, but what is a good angle? Like you're saying this. So I'm 101 kilos now. Just drinking water and eating veggies and stuff. The lightest I've been in my adult life. Good job, me.
You only keep me around because I laugh at you,
Yeah, I know.
don't you? I'm realising this.
Yeah, it's like a rent-a-crowd.
All right, get on with it.
Okay. So now we've talked about adding rock into the tank. We had a little distracted chat about upgrading a tank. Now, fish introduction. So the first thing you want to do is get yourself a wish list. So make sure you chuck something funny into the wish list just to keep us entertained. And then shoot it through to either several aquarium shops or people that you trust their opinion. And so you want to narrow down what you want to keep in the tank. And particularly if you're a beginner, then you're going to want to get some opinions. You want to find out what trouble that particular fish might cause. You want to find out what the demeanor of that fish is. And if you put a little list of fish together, then we're able to suggest, hey, look, don't put that one with that one. Be careful of that one, it grows 4 foot long. Be careful of this one, it's going to eat this one. So these lessons that you can learn are very cheap with a fish list before you actually go about buying your fish. Then once you know the fish that you want, then you want to have your quarantine tank set up. So as you get your fish, they go into the quarantine tank. They get established in the quarantine tank before they go into the main tank. Because what you don't want to do is bareback the fish. Hey Julian, you don't want to get the fish and then just shove them straight into your fish tank, because you don't know what diseases you might be shoving in there. So you want to try to quarantine them for a month. That way they can establish in the quarantine tank. If they're getting any bumps or warts or rashes they shouldn't have.
Are we still talking about fish here? Just joking.
I get sidetracked very easily. So anyway, so you want to quarantine them for a month, want to make sure they're all happy, make sure everything's doing what they're meant to do, and then once you're happy with them, you can then establish them into the main tank, because that's the safe way of going about it. Then also with your wish list as well, you want to try to introduce the fish at the right time. So the hardier fish tend to want to put them in first, and then you want to group your fish. So any clownfish you want, they go in at the same time. Any angels you want, they go in at the same time. Any tangs you want, they go in at the same time. Because what's a problem is if you go putting a tang in there and then he gets well established and then he gets territorial and then you and then he gets territorial and then you
What did you do?